So once again, you know, these just slide around here like this. Remember, got a plastic wall here, so you want the button side of your carriage bolt to go through. You don't want to tighten it all the way. You just want to just get it on so it holds that thing together like that. Kind of help. This is going to be your third hand here. So I'm going to take my pipe. I'm just going to shove it through here like this. And then I am just going to lightly just kind of give it a snug here. So luckily this stuff is kind of lightweight, doesn't weigh a whole lot. It's got a lot of strength, but it doesn't weigh a whole lot. So that way you can kind of hold that up with one hand and not. Must be noon, I can hear, or a tornado siren test. We get those a lot here too. So what I'm going to use is, like I did the last one, I used this level as my prop here. So I'm going to come up with it somewhere in that range. Now I'm just going to give it a light snug here. There we go. And see, now it's holding it for me. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to slide over to this side here, and then I'm going to get this level. Level as much as I can. Come down just a hair. Okay. And then I am going to go ahead and take my driver. Just want to make sure that worked. And I am going to drive one side of this on. Sometimes you got to overcome and adapt, guys. We can run this carriage bolt through here like that. Now we can go ahead and tighten this up right here. Okay, so everything works. Want to make sure that works first before we get all froggy. And I don't have my unibit up here, so I'm going to have to improvise, which is okay. Not good on the drill bit, but I do have confidence in my cobalt drill bits. So here we go. Now that head can sink in there. And now we can tighten that up. That side there, we're still good and level. This side here should be tight. Okay, here we go. Now all we gotta do is make one more here and we'll be ready to go. All right, I understand this is going to be a long series. I'm kind of dragging some of these things out just because they are very important. I want to highlight on the important things and make sure you guys get all the information you need if you're looking at conquering one of these DIY kits or a all metal kit. We are to the stage now where we are putting on the hip boards and the baseboards. As you can see, we've got everything all buttoned up here, ready to go. I have done the other side, so I'm going to show you what I do here on this side. Now, there are many ways of doing hip boards and baseboards and many heights that you can go. I am choosing to go 4 foot. The reasoning behind that is I have 4 foot wide insect netting. You can get insect netting, I think, up to 6.5 foot wide. You may be able to get it wider than that even, but that's going to determine how far up you go. Now, the reason why I stay at 4 foot, if you notice, I have this first piece here. The reasoning behind that is because my ground posts are at 32 inches right here. So I use that ground post as my level piece. Now, remember, when we did put these ground posts in, if you guys go back a couple videos, when we put these in, we used a masonry line as a straight edge all the way across so I could take my cutoff wheel and I could cut the tops of the damaged posts off to make them completely level. Thinking that's a level surface now. So now I do not have to use a level to go all the way down because this is an entirely level surface at 32 inches on both sides. The ground is not going to be level, of course. No matter how good of an excavator you are, the ground is always going to be off a little bit. But the good thing about this ground is you can manipulate that with a sledgehammer by just pounding it in the ground and moving your boards where you need them to go. But the top rail boards here are going to be all the way straight. So that's why I use the 32 inches as my height there. And I use 4 foot insect netting, so I have extra to cut off on the top and the bottom to make sure I have enough to cover all the imperfections in the ground there. So as you can see, I've got the first board up. Now, there are 100 ways till Sunday to determine what you want to use for hip boards and baseboards. I have used everything from metal pieces that I got from Bootstrap Farmer for my metal kit. I have used 2x4s. I have used 2x6s. Now I am using 1x6s. And I think that's going to be my go-to going forward. All this is, as you can see here on the trailer, I just have little scabs cut here. It's just a treated 5/4 by 6, which 5/4 is just a hair over an inch. Just plain old deck boards. You can get all of these decking boards from any big box store in town, regardless what color it is. It really doesn't matter. I get my wood from one certain place here where I live because they have very high quality stuff here. I like to use treated lumber. Now, there's going to be a discussion about whether to use treated, whether not to use treated. You use whatever you want to use. All I'm saying is I have used untreated wood, and it does not last very long when it comes to ground contact or weather, hence not treated. I have used non-treated wood and then stained it. Didn't work very well. I've used non-treated wood and painted it, and it works okay. And I have used treated wood, and it works out great. I think it's all in what you're going to believe in. We're not here to push one way or the other, whether you should use it or you didn't. Use whatever you want. I've also thought about using that plastic decking board, that new age deck board, that pressed plastic stuff. It seems to be a little pricey where I'm at here in the Midwest, and I'm not too sure what I have seen of it. It likes to bow a lot because it is very flexible, and even at 4 foot spacing, I'm not sure if it's going to look right, and I'm not sure time after time of drilling screws into it if the screws will actually bite to that. I don't know. I don't have any experience using it, so I really can't say either way or not. These 5/4 by 6 inch deck boards that are 10 foot long, these seem to work out great for me, and they're fairly cheap. I think these deck boards here was like $6.50 to $8, depending on what store you went to, and I could just go pick them up. So what I did was I just went and got a big pallet full of them, and then I used it to build the other DIYs, and this is what I've got left here. So I'm going to use it to finish this off. For sure, run a masonry line all the way down. You can use that to butt up against it. Grab a level. You can grab a small little level there. The only difference is with these boards here, they do tend to warp a little bit. Some of them are a little... So that may be an inherence to you, but I know these are 100% level here because we did use the line levels, and we also use the masonry line. So I'm going to use it. So what I've got here is I've got some used boards that I'm redoing my tunnel number 4 over there. So I'm shortening that tunnel up because of some water issues I have. And so I'm repurposing a lot of that stuff that's already been used to go back into this one, and then saving the new stuff I have for a next tunnel project or something like that. So some of these boards are already going to have holes in it. We're going to try to line it up as much as possible, but sometimes you can, sometimes you can't, because these are two different things. So the first thing I like to do is I like to go ahead and get my board up here. As you can see, I'm using a third hand here, which is just a clamp, just one of those press-on clamps, just to kind of help me hold this so that way it doesn't flop around on me. And I've got my end post here, and I want my board to fairly be flush with this. You got to remember, this is where your plastic for your end wall is going to go. So anything that sticks out this direction is going to be poking a hole or possibly rubbing a hole into that over time. So to keep that from happening, keep you from replacing that sooner than you need to be, just make sure everything is just sucked up nice and tight here, nice and flush. And what we're using is I use a 3-inch carriage bolt because we have to go through 1 inch of board, at least 1 inch of board, and almost 2 inches of top rail post here. So that 3 inches, actually this is 1 5/8 inches, so this will barely stick out where I can get a lock washer and a nut on here. So first thing we want to do is we want to use our quality drill bit. I have used cheaper drill bits. I do have one in here as a backup spare. It's cheap. No matter how expensive a drill bit you buy, they're all going to go dull. What I used is I went and got the exact size drill bit that I needed for my carriage bolts, and this is cobalt. So I think I spent $15 on this drill bit, and I have literally done 100-footer, a 200-footer, or 100, and 100, and then this 50 right here, and then redid that. So I have drilled, I don't know, probably 600-700 holes with this drill bit right here, and it's still sharp, and it's not as sharp as it was at the beginning, but it's still sharp right now. So this is a good quality drill bit. So I would advise that you go out and spend a little bit of money on a good drill and a good drill bit to make this process a little easier on you. So what I like to do is you can put 2 carriage bolts in here. There's no need to. There's not a whole lot of weight here. So I'm just going to put one dead center, and I'm just going to go real easy, drill through the wood and get to the metal. I'm not pushing here. I'm just using my body to hold the drill straight. I'm letting the drill bit do all the work. I'm just barely putting a little bit of pressure just to hold this drill straight. There you go, just like that. I'm going to grab my carriage bolt, and I'm just going to run it through here, just like that. We'll get up closer here. I'm just going to get the first one in, and then I'll show you guys. So I put a washer on, I put a lock, and then a nut on here. You don't have to do the flat washer and the lock washer and the nut. I tend to do that to give me a good solid base, because when I'm going up here, this pole is a little bit of curve, so it does take up a little bit of weight. So I want, or take up a little bit of space. So I do want a flat surface for that lock to lock on. And remember, we don't have to crank this down. We only have to tighten this until the lock washer smashes. Anything past that, you're messing with the mechanical ability of the lock washer. That's all we're doing. All we're doing is just snugging this down till the lock washer is flush, and then it's locked on. So that's nice and good. So let's move on to the next one. All right, as you can see here, this is one of the used boards, so that hole did line up. This one over here didn't, but this one did. So we're just going to reuse this hole right here, just for aesthetics wise. You could go up, you can go down of it. We're just going to reuse this hole. So I've got my clamp here just holding this flush, and I'm just going to start my drill bit nice and easy. Remember, no pressure. You can see how it's biting through there. Going through the second layer now. Easy peasy, just like that. I think a lot of times people get too excited about things. I know I have in the past, and ruined a bunch of drill bits. You can see how that sticks proud of that pretty far. So it gives us plenty of room to get our stuff on there. Like I said, I don't know if you need to put a flat washer on here with the lock or not. It's kind of up to you. I do, and I don't have any problems with it loosening back up or anything like that. So the lock washer, you notice, does have, it's a little proud on one side. And when that lock washer crosses down, it is tight, and that's what holds the mechanical. Well, if I can get that on there, down by hand. Grab your 1/2-inch ratchet wrench. See, I'm not tightening very, just like that. There you go. Snug that down, that's tight. We're just going to move on down the line. Got the last carriage bolt in this one. You know, this is the end wall now of the front of our tunnel, so we have to fill this space. So what I went ahead and did is I found a piece of board that was almost cut perfect. It's a little bit shy, like we're talking 1/4 inch, but it's not going to hurt anything because we are going to put a scab on here. So it's not going to hurt anything. So what we are going to do is, like I said, these boards are expensive depending on where you come from, and so waste not, want not. So what we're going to do is we're just going to put this on the end here just to give us a little extra hand here. And what I've got is I've got some 1 3/4 inch wood screws here. There are galvanized or copper painted or whatever wood screws. They're for outdoor use here. They've got the little twist lock design on it to sink those in and not back out. I like to use those because, for one, they're fairly cheap, and for two, I can reuse them over and over and over and over again. I found they do not corrode, which is the purpose of that. They're a deck screw, 1 3/8 deck screw. It's got a little special twist right here on the shank, and that helps it hold in and not squeak. So yeah, so what we're going to do is we're just going to cut some scab pieces here. I just usually make them about 6 inches long, just whatever extra. I don't go crazy with that. Just do what you got to do. If you got extra wood pieces laying around, just do what you got to do. I don't have enough hands to hold everything. Try not to put your hand on the back side while you're screwing the boards. Ask me how I know. Ask me how many times I've actually drilled a screw through my finger and tightened my finger on the back side of a board. You only do that one time, maybe twice, before you figure out not to put your hand directly behind that. The reason why I use the 1 3/4 is you got to remember these are 5/4. So basically it's going to be a little bit over like 2 1/4 inches, 2.5 inches, something like that by the time you measure that. So it'll be like 2 1/4 inches, somewhere in that, without doing the math right. So this screw you can run all the way through here tight and not poke out the back side of this board. The reason why that's very important is because if you're working inside of this tunnel, I've done it a million times and I've used the wrong screws because I had them on hand and that's what I had. I didn't want to go buy any more screws. They'll stick out this board. And then you're going to want to put your hand here for support while you're planting something, and you're going to run those tips of those screws through there, or you're going to catch your shirt on it when you're walking by here. Trust me, it's easier. Just go spend the $10, $12, get a pound of these. You get more than enough to build your high tunnel with that. And yeah, that's a no-brainer. Just like that, snug that up. I usually put 3 to 4 in each board, just enough to hold the scab. Like I said, there's no weight. If I can get this one started. I'm not building a house with this, so we're not putting any weight for, say, forceful on it. This is just going to have the tracking on it that holds the plastic. And yes, this is going to be supported with carriage bolts, and there's also wiggle wire and tracking that are going to go across the top to help you hold this plastic. So this is basically just a board to hold plastic on. The reason you want to use carriage head bolts instead of the hex bolts, I think I mentioned this earlier, but it's worth mentioning again. Instead of a regular headed bolt, you could use whatever you want. This is smooth. So when you do put your plastic up against it, or you put a piece of tracking over the top, or you put your insect netting, you're not catching like you would on a regular bolt and possibly ripping that, or causing, it may not rip the first time, but as you use it over time, the wind moves back and forth and the seasons change, it may catch that edge and rip a piece of that. That's exactly why you want all of your bolt ends to face in. So that way on the outside, when you put your tracking, it's smooth on this side, so it has the least amount of chance to catch anything. I'm going to go ahead and get all the scabs put on here. Then I'm going to get the bottom on, then I'm going to show you how to put the wiggle wire on. What we've got here is we've got aluminized tracking. If you guys have done any Googling at all, or if you have looked at the Bootstrap Farmer website or any other greenhouse website, you will see what they call wiggle wire tracking and wire, or it will be called C-channel and wire or something like that. Basically, this is your wiggle wire right here. As you can see, it is wiggled. So when you install it, you wiggle it and it installs itself. I think that's where the generic name comes out, is wiggle wire. I think it's actually called spring wire is what most companies call it. They call it spring wire lock channel and then spring wire. I call it wiggle wire. It's kind of the generic Kleenex brand name for it. But anyway, so what we are doing here is I will show you. Now, when we talked about putting this top board, what they call a hip board, that is called your toe board or baseboard. That is called your hip board. So those are the two terms you'll hear if you're looking into greenhouses or doing any type of Googling or YouTubing or anything like that. So the hip board, you do know, we talked about, we cut those posts off at 32 inches all the way across there. So that pretty much is level. I did put a level on a couple pieces just to double check my work, and everything looks to be within spec. Now down here, you guys can see the ground is not level like we talked about. You can see we've got some high spots here, and then you see a little bit of light shine through just like you do down there. And that is a low spot. That is from when the dirt work was done, where it was not 100% level. And that's going to happen. There's a couple things you can do. You can get a shovel, and you can grab a bunch of virgin Mother Earth, and you can fill those spaces in to fill that hip board up. Two, what I like to do when I can is, you'll see right there, it's kind of bunched up. What I did was I took a 4-pound sledgehammer on the top, and I just kind of, this ground is pretty soft because we had rain not too long ago, so I just kind of beat the ground down to push that board down as far as I can. You can only go so far with that. Aesthetics is going to take you the rest of the way. So I have gotten to a point where I'm okay with the look of this. This is a greenhouse. It's a high tunnel. Unless you are laser straight on your dirt work, you are going to have imperfections in this bottom toe board or baseboard, because the ground is going to be wavy. And these boards are going to be, for the most part, flat. So you're going to see the majority of that. So what you can do is, what a lot of people do is, we use mulch into the high tunnels. So you can push mulch back up against there, and all that does, it's not hurting anything. It's not hurting any type of support. It's just aesthetically looking. What I'm probably going to go back and do is, I'm probably going to go back with some type of dirt or rock on top of this. And I'll probably get some colored gravel or something like that to kind of give it an aesthetic pleasing effect. And I will just fill like that spot there up with gravel all the way to the baseboard. Or if I'm getting a little cheeky, I can pull that landscaping fabric up, shove a bunch of dirt down there, and put the landscaping fabric back over the top. It's only 1-2 little spots down there, so it's really not going to affect. The other side came out perfectly fine. It was just this side, how he creeped over the side there a little bit too far. So saying that, we are going to use the level. So I got the first piece of channel on there, and then we are going to level everything off there. There's a couple ways you can do that. You can use a little torpedo level like I use here. You could use a chalk line. I tried to use a chalk line earlier, but with the way these boards are a little bit warped from being reused off of another tunnel, I can't get the snap just right. Even if I walk down and hold the line and snap it, you're snapping the chalk all the way down, and then by the time you get down to the end, there's no chalk on the line anymore. The other way you could do it is to run a masonry line like we have done, and run a line across there like that. But then on the other term, you really don't need to get that far into it. I don't think so. If you wanted to, by all means, you could do whatever you want. What I do is, I usually lay the first piece that is the worst piece of this tunnel, and then I line everything up to it, because everything else is pretty much, as you can see, before we get to that section down there where I showed you earlier, that's the only low spot. So like we talked about, is we got this first piece on here, and you can see it's a little high over there, a little low over here, because everything is going to slope this way. Because this, see this section right here, this is the second section I talked about. We talked about that first one, and then we had this corner where he was doing the corners. He got a little too far in right here. So we're going to come back with some rock or something to cover that up, or some mulch on the inside. It's not that big of a deal. You can leave it. It's not that big of a deal. It's not going to hurt anything. You may get a few toads or snakes or something like that to crawl through there. but ultimately it's not interfering the way you grow or anything like that. So what I like to do is I like to go ahead and grab that wire, grab my torpedo level like this. Go ahead and just throw that on the ground. And I do know by putting this torpedo level right here that I am dead level right here. So I'm going to come off this piece. As long as you use this piece to come off this, you'll be fine. So I grab my screw. Now remember, this is a 5/4 board, which means this is pretty much an inch thick. You don't want your screws being longer than an inch thick because they're going to stick out the back and you're going to grab your shirt or grab your hand when you're not looking. It's going to cut you and it's going to hurt and you're going to cuss and you're going to scream. So why go through all that? 3/4 inch screws. So I'm guaranteed that when I put these in, they do not go through the back of this unless you really hammer them home. You're just snug fitting this stuff, so there's no need to do that. 3/4 screws. These are wood screws, or some of these are these right here. Wood screws, that's kind of a bad name. These are 3/4 inch sheet metal to wood screws. These are the same screws you use on metal roofing on houses or barns or anything. It is galvanized, and so it will keep corrosion and rust proof off. It's got a rubber washer on it to keep water out of the hole, and it's 3/4 inches long. So I like using these to put any type of metal to wood, because predominantly that's what you're doing when you're building a Morton style building house or sheet metal roofs or something like that. So it's the same metal roofing screws that I use, and you can get those at pretty much any box store. So what I do is I'll line this piece of channel up. You can use clamps, you can use a second hand, whatever. I just line it up to match the end of the other one here, just like that. I take my level and I walk myself down, predominantly down to the end here. Like I said, this doesn't get, building a house perfect, but this gets pretty gosh darn straight. So you can see we'll put the level right there is level. Let's do this again since I moved it on accident. We are level right there. So I will go ahead and pop the end screw there. And I put 5 screws into this. I put one on the end, one on the end, one pretty close to dead center, and then I put one in between those. The reason I do all of them, even the baseboard or the toe board here, and I do the hip board the same way. You got to remember, you're holding plastic. This is not holding any plastic for the most part. This is just going to hold insect netting or anything like that. If you choose to use that, we're going to use insect netting. So this is going to be where the insect netting goes up to the hip there, and then the hip will hold the insect netting and the plastic going over the hoop. So let's get going down the line here. Could I do better? Yes, of course. There's always a way to do better. But for the most part, for my abilities, my lack of construction building abilities in my life, this is pretty gosh darn good for me. And this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is tunnel number 5 for me. And we've done pretty good here with 70 to 80 mile an hour winds, and not ripping any of these tunnels down. So I think that's a win-win. This piece may or may have to get cut. You can see it's a little longer than what it needs to be. So what we are going to do, we're just going to get close here. You see how this is a little long here. So we're just going to take the snips. You don't have to go all the way out to the edge. You got to remember, because that wall's going to be, I like to come in probably about 1/4 of an inch. I'll just make a little snip there. I'll just show you a cheap method. I've got cheap snips. These are from Harbor Freight, so they're really cheap. They're not super sharp because I've been using them to do this now. So, you get what you get. You get what you pay for. This is just cheap soft aluminum. So let's make a couple cuts. And then you got this little piece, and you can see how it's bent out. So just take the snips. I could go get a pair of pliers. I could do all that. These pliers are cheap. I bought them just for this purpose, knowing that I was going to be rough on them, and I will use them for outside greenhouse use, not for shop use. I have a separate set of higher grade tools for my shop as I do outside. I have 2 sets of tools, one for outside use like this, and then one for mechanic body shop use, and those are higher end tools. So They do not go outside. They do not get loaned out. We are going to be good. We got that. Now we got to come up with something for this right here. Figure out, lean down on some metal shavings here. What we're going to do here is, you can see I've got a scrap piece that we cut off. You can see it's too long. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to come in here. Now this is going to go on this pole. The reason why is because remember, you have this 1-inch board here. So let's pretend this is the piece. See, you're going to want this because this is going to be where you connect your insect netting here all the way down and complete your circuit for your insect netting. So what we're going to do is we're just going to come up here, going to make a rough guess here. Just get close. Like I said, you can measure it if you want with the tape measure. For time, this is just as easy, I found out. I don't have to keep running back and forth, grabbing what I need. Everything's on my ditty. And this stuff is really, really lightweight aluminum. It's not heavy at all. I always put the janky end towards the bottom there. I always put the janky end towards the bottom so that way I don't have to see it. Grab my drill driver, exchange bits, because we are now going to a 3/4 inch number 10 sheet metal screw. Remember, here's your sheet metal screw right here. You can see it. It's a number 10. There is your 3/4 number 8 wood screw. So the heads are going to be different. This is sheet metal. You can see it's got the teeth here like the drill bit. This does not. This goes into wood. This goes into metal. This hip and baseboards are wood. This galvanized piping is metal. So we need to switch back. And everything is going to be the same style head. Besides these, because I had to buy another box and they're a different size. But for the most part. Ow. Ow. Ooh, that was hot metal. Woo. So we're going to come in here and put one more dead center. There we go. Our insect netting or plastic, whatever you want to do. We choose to run insect netting here so that way when I roll up the sides, as you can see, is the ones in the back, kind of keep the critters from going out. Doesn't keep everything out. Doesn't keep all the thrips out because I don't have thrip-proof insect netting because it's very expensive. I have standard insect netting, so it keeps everything pretty much out of there. But yeah, so we're going to get working on this. So now what I need to do on the front of this, you guys got the idea of what we're doing here, what we're trying to get accomplished. So from this point, you guys can take this on. So what we're going to do is we're going to put a baseboard at the bottom. There's no hip board here. Remember, there's nothing here. We're just going to do the baseboards, as you can see, like we did on the end here. Let me walk you over there. We're going to do the same thing to the front and then put the door in. I've got a pre-made door from Bootstrap Farmer. That is what we're going to put into this tunnel, but you can see it's just the baseboard. Your plastic is going to tuck into that channel. Once again, we'll take you around. You guys can see how we got the channel here. We got just a couple pieces here hooking this together, and then we've got your channel here. And then what we will do is each one of these walls here will run a full stick up on each one. That will tighten the plastic wall there. It will hold it at the bottom, and then at the top there, you can see where the top of the ladder that box is. That is our heat vent on both sides. There is actually tracking up there, and there will be insect netting up there also. So that way, that will allow the heat to roll up top because heat rises. That heat will roll from the front to the back with the north and the south wind here, the way this tunnel faces. And the heat will come out the back. So, there you go. Long explanation for a short thing. Okay, one thing before I did stop for the night. Went ahead and got the hip board and baseboards put on. Got all that bracking, but I thought I never did show you how to do this hoop because this is a flat piece of tracking and this hoop's bent. It's very simple. This stuff bends really easy. So what I like to do is I go ahead and put one screw. Now, you guys seen this screw? It's just the sheet metal screws. Remember, it's metal into metal. So we're using the sheet metal screw, number 10 sheet metal screw. and it's got just the little washer with the rubber on the outside. It just came that way. I don't particularly look for that. That's just what I saw, so I bought. So I put one in there, and if you come around to the side here, you can see how easy that bends with my hand. I'm not even pushing it. So don't force this, but you just want to go easy. So what I do is this first bend is pretty extreme on here, so I like to split this into 5s. So I will just push with my hand like this, and I will grab this post. Then I'll put one in. See how it's holding that arch really good? Step ladder, I'm right-handed, but one side, since I can't technically do the inside, because I'll be doing it backwards, so I have to do it left-handed. So I've been known to miss a screw or 2, or 3, or 4. So you see how we're just still pushing this like this. It's just really easy and light. And it even, you notice we have that band clamp there for our hurricane strapping going down to our rod to the ground there, and it still goes over the top of that. There's a little bit of a gap here, but it's not going to hurt anything. You got to remember, plastic bends over the top of this, and then another piece goes over the top of this. So just reach down. I want to put one in this bend sometimes, but I'll come over right here where it touches, just shy, probably about 4 or 5 inches shy of this, and then I'll come up and I will put another one, at least that's where I'm working forward. See how it's got a little gap right there, but it's not going to hurt anything. So what I like to do is it flattens up against this, and I will put a screw right in that hurricane strap. Now we've got this bolted to this, bolted to the pipe, and then bolted back here. So now it's held twice. So now you're not going to get any pull from this. And then we'll just work our way up the pole like that to protect my high tunnel, my crops, anything like that from insect damage or possible insect damage. It's not 100% fail-safe, but it is pretty darn good insurance to keep your crops safe, even if it's not from insects, if it's just from small animals like cats, dogs, skunks, squirrels, mice, snakes, anything like that, stuff that you may want to keep out of here. Now what I use is, I use ag fabric. I'm going to step in here so you guys can kind of see this a little better. Hopefully you guys can see that. It is just ag fabric insect barrier netting. This is kind of like the standard that everybody uses. There's a lot of companies that have their own versions of this. I use ag fabric because they are a name brand. And by looking at the reviews on it, it's really good stuff. You can get it at any width or any length. I think 100-foot length is like your standard, but you may be able to get a little longer than that, I think. But what I ordered was 4 foot wide by 100 foot long. You remember, this is 32 inches here. So 4 foot's going to give us a good, it's going to give us a good 8 to 12 inches there extra, so we can pull this awful tight here. You could move your hip board up a little bit to use a little more insect netting and leave less space, but I like to err on the caution side of having a little more to pull from. I've done it before where I thought I had a couple inches extra access to move around, and did not, had to reorder everything. So I like to give myself plenty of meat on the bone here to help me out, especially when you're doing this by yourself. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to grab this out of the package. Remember, this is 100 foot long here. I'm just going to throw that over there. So as you can see, it's pretty good quality kind of stuff there. You can see through it. Air gets through there. All right, once you get this out of the package, what I like to do is, I'm right-handed, so I like to do everything going backwards on this side. If you try to go this way, if you're left-handed, you could go this direction and wouldn't have any issue. But since I'm right-handed, I have to go backwards on this, so that way I'm not falling and fumbling into this. So, like I said, there's a couple things you can do here. I go ahead and give me a couple, just a couple of feet here extra, and I grab my wiggle wire and I grab the first part of the fabric. It would help if you actually had a second hand to kind of help hold, especially if it's a little windy today, so this is a little troublesome. I did the other side, it took me a little longer, but I got it figured out. So what I like to do, this is why you guys see it gives me about an extra 6-8 inches on the top, about 3 or 4 on the bottom. This is why I like to go a little less than what it is.
I like to, if you guys can see that, I like to give myself at least a couple inches up and a couple inches out. That way I've got plenty of room to fiddle with this. Now, I'm just going to stick the spring wire in there to kind of hold this. You can see how easy this is going to go. You can also stick some spring wire on the bottom here. I'm going to go ahead and do that. I've got another piece laying here. I'm going to go ahead and grab this. And I'm not going to pull super tight because you don't want to stretch this. If you stretch this, you'll get it out of shape. And then you possibly could have some issues going on down the road. All I'm wanting to do is I just want to give it a little snug there. And this is like an extra hand. See how that's holding that up? This is just like an extra hand here. And I'm going to work my way down, and I'm going to pull my netting up to almost the top of this rail. You can see how easy this is. I'll get you in close here in a second, guys. Throw this over. As you can see, I just pull the netting to right about there. I'm not pulling tight. There's still some slack. I'm not pulling tight. There's still slack in here. I'm just giving myself a little bit of tension to help me hold this up. As you pull this up and you put your spring wire in there, you can notice it does pick up the slack there because you're smashing that into there. So it's going to take up a little bit of slack. Hence why you want to leave just a little meat on the top here. Not a whole lot. And you can see once we pull this down, it's nice and snug there. So you're just going to work your way back down. Now it's the springness of that wire holds that in there. You're going to push that in. This is a good example. When you get to the end here, you can grab a pair of your side cutters here, and all you're going to do is you're going to grab it with that and help bend it and push it back in place. Snap this back in. You can put 3 of these spring wires inside of this one standard channel, and that's going to come in handy later. So we're just going to work our way back down just like this. You can see how this goes pretty quickly. So we will grab our diagonal cutters and we will cut that. Okay, you can see that's nice and tight. It's got a little bit of, you can see it's got a little bit of memory to it. That's because it's been folded into a package. Remember that, it's been folded into a plastic package. So the sun and the wind and everything, as the sun beats down on this, it will actually stretch everything and make it look like all the other tunnels. So we've got 2 pieces now for the end. So here at the end, what I like to do is I'll go ahead and grab a couple of these small pieces and just take a look. I do have some spares over there, so I like to keep anything over 4 or 5 inches on the spring wire, because at 4 to 5 inches, that is a usable product still for something to lend as a third hand, just to hold something up while you readjust, or to actually use it for the shade cloth. That's what you guys have seen me use that before. But so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab the end. I'm going to tuck this around. Like I said, there's multiple ways you can do this if you've got partners or anything to help. Just going to give it a little bit of a snug here. Just like this. I don't want to stretch it. You don't want to stretch it. You'll make the holes too big. You just want to give it a little bit of a snug bite there. Just like that. And then when you get down to the bottom, you just want to be easy peasy with it, because that's going to be your choke point down here to where everything is nice and tugged. You could poke a hole in that fabric and give a bug or something a way in. Now that we're down at the opposite end, we can see how much slack we've got in here that we can pull. So we're just going to pull it snug. We're not going to stretch this. You don't want to stretch this. You just want to pull it snug. It's kind of, I know I hate to say this, it kind of has the consistency of a elastic band, like on a pair of underwear or something like that. It's got that elastic kind of feel to it. I know that's a bad representation, but I don't know how else to explain it. So you just want to kind of pull it snug, get your wire in there. And this is why they call it that spring wire, because you can get in there and it's sprung. It's easy. See how easy it is to bend it. So just kind of pull it and work your way down with it. Just like this. And when you get down to about the last couple inches here, I like to go ahead and kind of make a mental note of where that's going to be. Then I'll grab my diagonals. I'll just grab that spring wire to help me as another hand, and then pop that in. That we're at the end here, we're going to go ahead and trim this off. You don't have to. I mean, for all sense and purposes, you really could just leave it here. I like to trim it up and give me 2 knuckles, which is probably about an inch. You can see how I'm pulling this. I won't cut this here. So what I'll do is I'll come down to where it's a little bit high, like right here, and I'll just cut this. Just like that. And I'm using a pair of dull scissors. So I will come in, as you can see that I'm just pulling away from that like you would a piece of tape on something that's been painted. And I'm just going to lightly trim this off. I'm just doing this for aesthetics. I'm just trying to show you what I do here on my farm, how I get things done. So it may be something to give you an idea, so then you could tweak it a little bit to make it fit your farm. You know, that's all these videos are really about. Just enough education so you understand what's going on. And then from that point, you know, you guys can figure it out.